still want to discuss the very important issue of the US elections. It is heating up. We are bound to hear some sort of result in terms of this election soon. Counting is still continuing. We're monitoring a number of states, battleground states, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, among them as well, Nevada. So stand by. We will get you the very latest with regards to this. It is, let's discuss this further. Let's take this further. Americans in the hotly contested elections. The chief executive of the South African Institute International Affairs, Elizabeth Sidiropoulos, joins me now live. Elizabeth, pleasure having you on the program. Elizabeth, you're live on the agenda. Welcome. Can you hear us?
Good morning, Blaine.
Great to have you on the program. Thank you very much. All right. It seems that we have a bit of a delay, so folks at home, just bear with us with regards to that. Elizabeth, in the lead up to these elections, many said, this will be a referendum on how President Donald Trump has handled the coronavirus pandemic. Given over 200,000 people have lost their lives, you would assume that, the coronavirus will be an issue at the very top of everyone's mind. But it's not necessarily the case, isn't it? The economy, racial inequality, these are also major concerns. As you take a granular look at the vote, what do you pick up?
So I think absolutely what you're saying is correct, that was the assumption, that this would be a referendum, particularly on his handling of the coronavirus. I mean, over 240,000 people and counting have died. But if you look at the vote so far, he certainly hasn't been punished for his handling of the pandemic. In fact, if you compare it to the 2016 election, even though he is trailing in the popular vote, he nevertheless, and of course in the Electoral College, he nevertheless has actually garnered 5 million more votes so far than he did in 2016. And I think he has really mobilized, and that was his focus, his constituency. So his approach was not Joe Biden's approach, which is to sort of, be the unifier, but really to mobilize his constituency. And if you look at some of the visuals in various channels, TV channels over the last several days, you will see that this is a very, very divided country.
Correct.
And that while Joe Biden does have the majority of the popular vote, there is still a very sizable, strong portion of the electorate that actually is a committed supporter of Donald Trump. And I think it will be very difficult for them.
Let's dig a little deeper with regards to this dynamic. Biden, as you rightfully say, seems to be winning the popular vote by a couple of million votes. But when you analyze the vote, did people vote for Biden because he excites them, maybe his policies, or did they vote for Biden because they hate Trump?
I think it's probably a combination of things. So firstly, I think the Democrats really went out for some, well in advance of the election, really to make sure that their base actually went out to vote. And because of the concerns around voter suppression, which is not new, by the way, in the American electoral system, that is a challenge. They actually focused on trying to get them to register early, to use mail-in ballots, or to vote in advance where the states allowed for that. And certainly the coronavirus also meant that a number of states also changed their regulations around early voting to be able to accommodate people to vote. I think a lot of people, so there was a lot of mobilization of the communities that generally support Democrats, but which may not have come out for Hillary Trump. I think there is also a number of people who might sort of regard themselves as Republicans, who nevertheless, I think after 4 years, were really tired of this anger, of this aggression, of this, this division, this kind of narrative that dominated, I think, the American society and indeed the world.
Yep.
And so you had many of these people coming out. I mean, the record turnout is phenomenal. I mean, we're looking at 160 million votes cast, of which just over 100 million were actually cast before the 3rd of November.
If anything, both candidates must be congratulated for bringing out their base and their supporters to the polls. And you heard Sophie Mokoena earlier on talk about the various voting blocks. We're talking about the Latino voters, black voters, white voters, but each race is not monolithic. There are a lot of complexities here. What do you make of the level of participation and the mobilization, especially of minorities?
Well, the first point to make is, of course, that this is a vindication of democracy, that people, I think, I'd like to believe that the sort of the high voter turnout shows that people believe in the democratic process and that their vote can make a difference. And certainly in some of these very closely contested states, we can see that one vote actually does make a difference. I think the issue of what will be interesting, and we'll see that in the days to come, the demographics and the minority votes and the gender breakdown perhaps are not as well defined as we might have expected. So while I think Joe Biden probably received certainly the largest proportion of the African American vote. If you look at some of the Hispanic voting areas, for example, in Miami, where they lost that county, the Democrats lost that county, which I think Hillary had actually won in 2016. You see that certainly Cuban Americans, Venezuelans actually supported Donald Trump. The same can be said in terms of age breakdown, as well as gender. What seems to be the case more clear is that where educational levels and geography are ones that more closely tally with support for Democrats or Republicans. So the Midwest and sort of college education.
Elizabeth,
Midwest for the Republicans, college education.
Yeah. Elizabeth, thank you very much indeed for your perspective. Unfortunately, you run out of time, but we no doubt will bring you back in. It seems to be heating up. Hopefully, we'll get some finality with regards to the results in the next couple of hours, but we do appreciate your perspective. Be well.
Right, thanks.
All right, Elizabeth Sidiropoulos there, the Chief Executive of the South African Institute International Affairs. We thank her for her perspective there.